Ma'am, you need to gather your things. This place isn't for loitering.
I'm not loitering. Mind your business.
Well, no, you don't really look like you belong here.
Are you detaining me for how I look?
Stand up before I make this a problem.
Special Agent Maya Vance.
For years, Special Agent Maya Vance was one of the FBI's sharpest field operatives, an elite investigator trusted with high-stakes operations and undercover missions that most agents never touch. She dismantled cyber fraud rings, tracked violent fugitives, and built a reputation for precision, discipline, and unwavering courage. But none of that mattered on the afternoon her coffee shop surveillance footage went viral. Dressed down in an oversized hoodie for an undercover meet, she looked, at least to one manager, like someone who didn't belong in the upscale cafe. Minutes later, a local patrol officer stormed inside, grabbed her arm, mocked her appearance, and ordered her to leave. He thought he was dealing with a loiterer. He had no idea she was one of the FBI's most respected agents, until she raised her badge. What happens when a decorated federal hero is treated like a criminal for simply existing? And how does a simple cup of coffee end a police career? Stay with me. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. Special Agent Maya Vance was born in 1986 in Atlanta, Georgia. Her childhood had been stable and structured. Her mother, Dr. Patricia Vance, was a physician. Her father, James Vance, was a lawyer. They had raised Maya and her younger brother in a household where excellence was expected and justice was discussed at the dinner table. Maya had understood from an early age that careers should serve a higher purpose. She had watched her mother heal people. She had watched her father defend people in court. She had understood that her own career should also serve justice. She had graduated from Emory University in 2008 with degrees in criminal justice and forensic accounting. She had worked for 3 years as a forensic accountant for a private firm, tracking money laundering and financial fraud. Then she applied to the FBI. She had been recruited straight into the FBI's Undercover Operations Division. For 14 years, she had served as a field agent. She had worked undercover in cyber fraud investigations. She had infiltrated sophisticated criminal organizations. She had worked with confidential informants to dismantle illegal networks. She had built a reputation as someone who could move seamlessly between worlds, someone who could establish trust with criminals, someone who could gather evidence without being detected. Her conviction record was exceptional. 123 criminals prosecuted successfully based on evidence she had gathered. Her undercover work had resulted in the recovery of over $48 million in stolen assets. She had received 3 commendations from the FBI director. She had testified before Congress about financial fraud and money laundering. She was respected within the Bureau. She was known for her discipline. She was known for her restraint. She was known for her ability to maintain composure under pressure. She was, by every measure, one of the FBI's most trusted and valued agents. At 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in October, Maya Vance entered The Daily Grind, an upscale coffee shop in Brookridge, an affluent suburb northwest of the city. She was wearing an oversized gray hoodie, worn blue jeans, and white sneakers with scuffs. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup. She was intentionally dressed down. Her appearance was deliberately designed to not draw attention. She was working undercover. The coffee shop was moderately busy. There were business people on laptops. There were students with textbooks. There were a few retired individuals reading newspapers. The ambient noise was the sound of typing, quiet conversation, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. Maya ordered a medium black coffee. She paid cash. She did not engage in conversation with the barista. She moved to a corner table, positioned so she could see the entrance and most of the interior. She sat down. She opened a novel, a thriller she had been reading. She waited. She was waiting for a confidential informant, someone embedded in a luxury goods counterfeiting ring that had been operating across multiple states, someone who had agreed to cooperate with the FBI in exchange for reduced charges in an unrelated case, someone who was scheduled to meet her at 2:45 p.m. Outside, in unmarked vehicles positioned at strategic points around the coffee shop, her tactical team waited as well. There were 4 other agents. They were equipped with recording devices. They were recording the interior of the coffee shop through a concealed microphone embedded in Maya's watch. They were prepared for any contingency. They were prepared to intervene if the meet went wrong. The coffee shop had security cameras. The footage would later become crucial evidence. The camera was positioned at a high angle, covering the entire interior of the shop. It captured the quiet, peaceful moment before everything changed. A manager named Derek Chen worked at the Daily Grind. Derek was 32 years old. He had been managing the coffee shop for 4 years. He was responsible for maintaining the cafe's upscale image. He was responsible for making sure the establishment catered to the professionals and students who frequented it. At 2:18 p.m., Derek Chen noticed Maya Vance. He noticed the oversized hoodie. He noticed the worn sneakers. He noticed that she looked different from the typical patron. He made an assumption. He assumed that someone dressed in such casual attire might not actually be a customer. He assumed that she might be someone who intended to linger without purchasing anything, or use the restroom without permission, or otherwise take up space. He approached her table. "Hi," he said, his tone not unfriendly but also not welcoming. "Are you waiting for someone?" "Yes, I'm expecting someone in about half an hour." Derek looked around the cafe. He looked back at Maya. "You're making some of our customers a little uncomfortable." The statement was not accurate. No customers had complained. No customers appeared uncomfortable. But Derek had made a decision. "I'm going to think it might be better if you waited somewhere else." Maya did not argue. She was undercover. She did not want to draw attention. She did not want to disrupt her operation. "I'll be fine. I purchased something. I'm going to stay." Derek paused. He looked at the coffee in front of her. He looked at her attire again. He made a decision. "I'm going to need you to leave," he said. His voice had become more authoritative. "I'm going to need you to gather your things." "I'm not leaving," Maya said. Her voice remained calm. "I've purchased something. I have a right to be here." Derek turned and walked away. He went to the phone at the register. He reported a loiterer. He reported someone who looked like she might be homeless. He reported that she was making customers uncomfortable, even though no customers had complained. He gave the address. He said an officer should come remove her. Officer Ryan Kessler received the call at 2:27 p.m. He was 40 years old. He had been on the police force for 16 years. He had conducted over 3,000 traffic and pedestrian stops. He had been the subject of 8 internal affairs complaints. None of them had resulted in discipline. Officer Kessler had a reputation in the department. He was known as aggressive. He was known for escalating encounters. He was known for not backing down. He was also known, among those who kept track of such things, for disproportionately stopping and detaining black individuals. Officer Kessler responded to the call. He did not treat it as urgent. He did not activate his lights. He simply drove to the coffee shop. He arrived at 2:34 p.m. He exited his vehicle. He was in uniform. His hand rested naturally on his belt. His Bodycam was mounted on his chest. He activated it as he entered the shop. The Bodycam captured everything from his perspective, an intrusive, close-up view of the interior, the sounds of the cafe, the movement of patrons, and then the moment his gaze settled on Maya Vance. Officer Kessler approached her directly. He did not introduce himself. He did not explain why he was there. He simply approached with the authority of someone who believed he did not need to justify his presence. "Ma'am, you need to gather your things and leave," Officer Kessler said. His voice was authoritative and dismissive. "The manager doesn't want you hanging around." Maya looked up from her book. She remained calm. She understood that she was undercover. She understood that drawing attention was dangerous. She understood that compliance in this moment might be the safest course. "I've purchased something," Maya said, gesturing to her coffee. "I'm waiting for someone." Not buying it, Officer Kessler said. He stepped closer. People like you don't usually come in here to wait. The words hung there. People like you. The phrase contained everything. Everything about her appearance. Everything about his assumption. Everything about the bias embedded in the statement. People like me? Maya asked. Her voice remained even. She was not going to let the statement pass without being challenged. Let's not start this, Officer Kessler said. His voice had dropped slightly, but it was more menacing because of that. Just stand up before this becomes something else. Several customers had begun watching. Some looked uncomfortable. Some seemed to sense that something wrong was happening. A woman at a nearby table whispered to her companion. A man with a laptop adjusted his screen, angling it so he could look at Maya and the officer without being obvious. Officer Kessler did not lower his voice. He was performing now. He was establishing dominance. He was demonstrating that he was in control. "I'm going to need you to stand up," Officer Kessler said. His hand had shifted. It was no longer resting on his belt. It was positioned as if he might grab someone. "I'm not breaking any laws," Maya said. She was still sitting. She was still calm. "I purchased a beverage. I'm waiting for someone. I have a right to be here." Officer Kessler stepped closer. He reached down. He grabbed Maya's upper arm, not gently, with force. The Bodycam captured the action, the moment where his hand closed around her arm. "Stand up," Officer Kessler said. It was not a request. Maya stood. She did not resist. She did not pull away. But she also did not comply out of fear. She stood because she understood that the situation was escalating, and she needed to remain in control. As she stood, her coffee spilled. It spilled across the table. It dripped onto the floor. The moment captured perfectly on the security camera. The moment where an officer had escalated an encounter with someone who committed no crime.
"You're being difficult," Officer Kessler said. His hand remained on her arm. The Bodycam captured his face. His expression was stern. His jaw was clenched. "I'm being calm," Maya said. Her voice was absolutely steady. "I'm not resisting. I'm not threatening. I'm asking you to release me." "You need to apologize to the manager," Officer Kessler said. "You need to leave this establishment." "I'm not apologizing," Maya said. "I haven't done anything wrong." The tactical team stationed outside was monitoring this through the concealed microphone in her watch. They were hearing every word. They were monitoring the situation. They were prepared to intervene if necessary. But they were also giving Maya the space to handle this herself. They understood that revealing the operation too early could compromise the confidential informant meeting. Officer Kessler's grip on her arm tightened. The Bodycam captured the action. The customers in the cafe watched. Some appeared shocked. Some appeared afraid. Some appeared angry at what they were witnessing. "This is unlawful detention," Maya said. Her voice remained controlled. "You have no probable cause to detain me. I have committed no crime. I am a customer in this establishment. You need to release me immediately." Officer Kessler did not release her. He twisted her arm slightly. It was a movement designed to hurt. It was a movement designed to establish dominance through pain. Maya did not cry out. She did not show pain. She remained absolutely composed. "You're not leaving me much choice," Officer Kessler said. "I'm going to cite you for trespassing and loitering." "You cannot cite me for trespassing when I'm an invited customer," Maya said. "The manager may ask me to leave, but you cannot arrest me for simply being here." Officer Kessler's face reddened. He was not accustomed to being questioned. He was not accustomed to someone knowing the law well enough to contradict him. "You know what?" Officer Kessler said. "I'm placing you under arrest for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest." "I'm not resisting. And I'm not being disorderly. I'm standing quietly in a public establishment where I've purchased something." Officer Kessler moved toward his belt. He was reaching for his handcuffs. That was when Maya made her decision. The situation had escalated beyond where she was willing to let it go. She had been grabbed, she had been twisted, she had been accused of crimes she had not committed. She had been treated as a criminal for simply existing in a public space while black. She reached slowly into her hoodie. Her hand moved deliberately. She was not going to give Officer Kessler any excuse to claim she was reaching for a weapon. She moved her hand toward her torso where her identification was located. "I'm reaching for my identification." Maya announced her action before she performed it. "I am an FBI agent. I am not a threat." She withdrew her FBI identification. She held it up. Gold badge, official seal, the photograph clearly visible. Special Agent Maya Vance, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Officer Kessler's face went white. The color drained from his face completely. He released her arm immediately. He stepped back. His hand moved away from his belt. You're FBI?" Officer Kessler said. His voice had changed. It was smaller, less confident. "Yes," Maya said. She held the identification open so he could see it clearly. "Special Agent Maya Vance, 14 years of service. You just assaulted a federal officer." The cafe went silent. Customers stared. The barista froze. Derek Chen, the manager, looked like he might faint. At that exact moment, the door to the cafe opened. 2 plainclothes FBI agents entered. One was carrying a recording device that had been concealed outside. The other was positioning himself between Officer Kessler and Maya. "Agent Vance, are you secure?" the first agent said. His voice was formal and professional. "Yes, I'm secure," Maya said. The second agent turned to Officer Kessler. "Sir, keep your hands visible," the agent said. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "Do not reach toward your belt. Do not move. You are in federal custody pending investigation of assault on a federal officer." Officer Kessler's hands rose immediately. He understood in that moment what he had done. He understood that he had assaulted someone. He understood that she was not a loiterer or a vagrant. He understood that the woman he had grabbed, twisted, and accused of crimes she had not committed was a federal law enforcement officer. Derek Chen, the manager, tried to explain. "I didn't know," Derek said. "I just thought she looked suspicious. I didn't know she was—" "We have it all on recording. The security camera, the body cam, everything." The footage went viral within hours. Derek Chen's report to police had been documented. The body cam footage had been captured. The cafe's security footage existed. Someone leaked the body cam footage to the internet. Within 48 hours, the video had been viewed over 20 million times. The comment sections were filled with outrage. People were angry. People understood what they had witnessed. They had witnessed racial profiling. They had witnessed an officer assaulting someone based on appearance. They had witnessed authority operating without justification. News outlets picked up the story. The local news covered it. The national news covered it. CNN ran segments on it. The story became national. The headlines were identical. Cop assaults FBI agent in coffee shop. Federal agent treated like criminal while doing undercover work. Patrol officer arrested after assaulting black FBI agent. Internal Affairs opened an investigation immediately. They reviewed the body cam footage. They reviewed the cafe's security footage. They reviewed the statements from witnesses. They documented unlawful detention without probable cause, unlawful arrest without probable cause, physical assault, bias-driven statements and conduct, violation of civil rights under color of law, abuse of authority. The investigation took 1 week. The findings were clear. Officer Kessler had violated Maya Vance's constitutional rights. Officer Kessler had assaulted her without justification. Officer Kessler had engaged in racial profiling.
The Department of Justice opened a federal investigation. Federal investigators examined Officer Kessler's entire history. They found 12 prior complaints of bias, 3 documented stops of black youth where no charges were ever filed, patterns of targeting minorities, no discipline on his record despite the complaints. The DOJ investigation concluded that Officer Kessler had a pattern and practice of racial profiling. The investigation concluded that the city had failed to discipline him despite evidence of misconduct. Officer Kessler was arrested and charged with deprivation of rights under color of law. The charge carried potential federal prison time. He was also charged with assault by a police officer, which was a state crime. Maya Vance filed a civil rights lawsuit. The case was titled Vance v. City of Brookridge. The lawsuit claimed civil assault, battery, racial profiling, interference with federal duties, infliction of emotional distress, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, violation of 14th Amendment rights. The city's legal team understood immediately that they had no defense. The footage existed. The evidence was clear. The Bodycam showed everything. They began settlement negotiations within 2 weeks. The city of Brookridge settled the lawsuit. They paid Special Agent Maya Vance $1.2 million in damages, $800,000 in compensatory damages for emotional harm and constitutional violations, $400,000 in punitive damages to send a message that this conduct would not be tolerated. Officer Ryan Kessler was fired. His badge was revoked. His certification was submitted to the State Police Decertification Board. He was added to the Brady List, a national registry of officers who had credibility problems or engaged in misconduct. Once on the Brady List, no law enforcement agency in the country would hire him. He was convicted in federal court of deprivation of rights under color of law. He was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. He was convicted in state court of assault. He was sentenced to an additional 9 months. His sentences ran consecutively. He would serve 27 months in federal prison. His pension was forfeited. He exited federal prison with no retirement benefits, no health insurance, no law enforcement career, and a federal felony conviction on his record. The coffee shop, The Daily Grind, was required to implement anti-bias training for all staff. The training focused on recognizing implicit bias and treating all customers with equal respect, regardless of appearance. The cafe posted a notice in the corner where Maya had been sitting, a notice that apologized for the incident and committed to equal treatment of all customers. Special Agent Maya Vance returned to duty 2 weeks after the incident. She did not seek media attention. She did not make public statements about her experience. She simply returned to her work. She continued her undercover operations. She continued her investigations. But the incident had changed something. She became a symbol. She became proof that racial profiling happened to everyone, including federal agents. She became proof that the system could be held accountable when the evidence was clear and undeniable. In an interview conducted months after the incident, Maya spoke about her experience. "I've spent my entire adult life enforcing the law," she said. "I've worked undercover. I've infiltrated criminal organizations. I've gathered evidence against people who were willing to kill to protect their operations. I've done this because I believe in justice. I believe in the rule of law. I believe that everyone deserves to be treated fairly." But on that afternoon, I was treated like a criminal because of how I looked. I was grabbed, I was twisted, I was accused of crimes I didn't commit, and the only reason it stopped was because I could prove I was someone in authority. What about everyone else? What about the people who don't have a badge to show? What about the people who are treated this way every day and have no way to prove that they don't belong in the back of a patrol car? Fear doesn't change anything. Accountability changes things. Evidence changes things. When we see what bias looks like, when we see it documented, when we see it punished, then maybe we start to build a system that actually works fairly for everyone.
The documentary closes with footage of the coffee shop, the corner where Maya had been sitting, the spot where she had been grabbed, the place where a simple cup of coffee had become evidence of a larger pattern. The narrator closes the story with a final thought. Special Agent Maya Vance returned to duty 2 weeks after the incident. She continued her undercover work. She continued protecting the nation from financial crime. Officer Ryan Kessler is currently serving his 27-month federal sentence. He will never work in law enforcement again. And the Daily Grind now trains its staff in anti-bias protocols in the very corner where Maya Vance was sitting, a reminder that bias exists everywhere, and accountability is possible when someone has the courage to stand up and the evidence to prove the truth. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, and if this story showed you something you didn't know before, hit subscribe, because these stories only have power when people actually see them.
Afternoon, officer. Could you tell me the legal basis for this stop?
Well, your car just looks a little out of place for this neighborhood. Wanted to see what was going on.
So no traffic violation, no equipment issue?
Look, sir, I'm asking the questions here. Keep your hands where I can see.
Understood. Just so we're clear, I'm a licensed criminal defense attorney. My badge and ID are right.
For 18 years, attorney Jamal A. Kingsley had been the man corrupt officers hated to see walk into court. A black criminal defense strategist who spent his entire adult life fighting crime, dismantling lies, and holding lawbreakers accountable, no matter the badge they wore. But none of that mattered on a quiet suburban afternoon when a patrol officer swerved behind his sedan, claiming it didn't belong in this neighborhood. No violation, no probable cause, just pure racial suspicion. What the officer didn't know was that Jamal had already hit record, live streaming every constitutional violation to his legal team. And what happens next will cost that cop his career and cost the city $500,000. Keep watching to see the downfall unfold. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. But if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. The afternoon was perfect, the kind of late summer day where the light had turned golden and warm and the temperature was just beginning to drop from the heat of midday. Willow Bend Road was quiet, tree-lined, the kind of suburban street where nothing ever happened. The houses were modest to middle class, ranging from 1970s colonials to more recent constructions. The yards were maintained, the driveways were clean. The neighborhood was the kind of place where people believed safety was guaranteed, where people believed that the rules applied equally, where people believed that authority operated fairly. Attorney Jamal A. Kingsley was driving on Willow Bend Road at 4:14 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon in early September. He was in his black 2023 Lexus sedan. The vehicle was clean. He maintained it meticulously. The registration was current. The insurance was current. The inspection sticker was current. Everything was in order. Absolutely everything was legal. He was driving at the speed limit. He was maintaining proper distance from other vehicles. He was not weaving. He was not speeding. He was not violating any traffic laws. He was simply driving home after a day at his office. He had had 3 client meetings. He had reviewed case files. He had drafted motions. He had done what he did every day. He had practiced law. He had defended constitutional rights. Behind him, a patrol cruiser rolled slowly. The officer inside was Officer Marcus Wellington. Officer Wellington was 37 years old. He had been on the police force for 13 years. He had conducted approximately 2,400 traffic stops over those 13 years. He had been the subject of 6 internal affairs complaints. None of them had resulted in discipline. None of them had resulted in changes to his conduct. Officer Wellington had a reputation in the department. He was known as aggressive. He was known for escalating encounters quickly. He was known for making stops based on vague suspicions. He was known for not backing down. He was also known, among those who paid attention to such patterns, for stopping a disproportionate number of Black and Latino drivers. Officer Wellington saw Jamal's vehicle. He saw a black man in a luxury sedan on a quiet suburban street. The calculation happened instantly in his mind. The calculation was not based on any traffic violation. There was no traffic violation. The calculation was based entirely on the assumption that a black man should not be driving an expensive vehicle in a nice neighborhood. Officer Wellington did not observe any traffic violation. He had no probable cause to conduct a stop. He had no reasonable suspicion. He had only an assumption. But the assumption was enough for him. It was always enough for him. It had been enough for 13 years. It had been enough for 2,400 stops. He swerved behind Jamal's vehicle. He did not follow at a safe distance first to observe if any traffic laws were being violated. He did not give the driver a chance to commit a traffic offense. He simply activated his lights immediately. The red and blue lights filled Jamal's rearview mirror at 4:14 p.m. Jamal immediately responded appropriately. He moved to the right lane. He activated his turn signal well in advance. He slowed gradually and smoothly. He did not brake suddenly. He moved toward the shoulder of the road. He pulled over completely, moving beyond the edge of the roadway into a wide shoulder area. He turned off the engine. He placed his hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. His hands were visible through the window. His posture was non-threatening. He was demonstrating absolute compliance with police procedure. Everything he did communicated, "I am not a threat. I am cooperating." The body cam activated as Officer Wellington exited his vehicle at 4:15 p.m. The timestamp was recorded. The image showed Jamal from behind initially, sitting calmly in his vehicle, hands on the steering wheel, everything about his posture communicating cooperation and respect for authority. Officer Wellington approached the driver's side window. He did not approach cautiously. He did not approach with the caution that would be shown to someone who might be a threat. He approached with aggression. His hand was near his belt. His posture was tense. His jaw was clenched. He did not introduce himself. He did not state a reason for the stop. He simply approached with purpose. Jamal had already rolled down his window before the officer reached it. He was looking forward, not at the officer. His posture was open. His breathing was steady. His hands remained on the wheel. He was not startled. He was not defensive. He was a man who had been in this situation before. He was a man who understood what was happening. He was a man who had seen this pattern hundreds of times in his career. He had defended people who had experienced exactly this. "This car looked out of place," Officer Wellington said. His voice was not neutral. It was not professional. It was accusatory. It carried the assumption of guilt. "Step out for me." "For what reason?" Jamal asked. His voice was calm, professional, measured. The voice of someone used to speaking in controlled tones. The voice of someone used to courtrooms and judges and precise language. Officer Wellington's jaw tightened. The body cam captured the micro-expression, the moment where someone encountered a question about his authority, the moment where someone asked him to justify himself. "I don't have to explain myself," Officer Wellington said. His voice had risen slightly. His hand had moved closer to his belt. "Out now. Don't make this difficult."
Attorney Jamal A. Kingsley was born in 1987 in St. Louis, Missouri. His childhood had been lived in a neighborhood called The Hill, which was a historically Italian neighborhood that had become predominantly black over decades. It was a neighborhood where crime was visible and police were constant presence. It was a neighborhood where the relationship between residents and law enforcement was complicated and often traumatic. His parents had worked hard to keep him and his younger sister away from that reality. His mother, Angela Kingsley, had been a registered nurse at a major hospital. She had worked long shifts. She had worked double shifts sometimes. She had worked to provide stability and safety. His father, James Kingsley Sr., had been a high school counselor. He had worked with students who had experienced trauma. He had understood that education could be a path forward. They had taught their children that education was the path forward, that following the law was not just about avoiding punishment. Following the law was about understanding how power worked. Following the law was about understanding how to challenge abuse of power. They had taught him that the law could be either a shield or a weapon. It depended on who wielded it. It depended on whether they wielded it fairly. Jamal had listened to his parents. He had excelled in school. He had graduated from the University of Missouri in 2009 with honors. He had been accepted to several law schools. He had attended Washington University Law School in St. Louis, where he had the opportunity to stay in his community. He had graduated in 2012, ranking in the top 15% of his class. He had been offered positions at prestigious law firms. He had turned them all down. He had chosen criminal defense law deliberately, not because it paid the most. It did not. Criminal defense attorneys made significantly less than prosecutors or corporate attorneys. He had chosen it because he believed that the Constitution's protections meant nothing unless someone was willing to fight for them in court. He had chosen it because he had watched his community experience police abuse, and he wanted to be someone who held officers accountable. For 18 years, he had worked as a criminal defense attorney. He had started at a public defender's office. He had spent 5 years defending people who could not afford attorneys. He had spent those 5 years building an understanding of how the system worked and how it failed people. Then he had opened his own practice. He had specialized in cases involving constitutional violations. He had focused specifically on police misconduct. He had defended clients accused of crimes, many of whom had been arrested illegally. He had fought in courtrooms against prosecutors who did not care about constitutional violations and officers who believed that the Constitution was an obstacle, not a protection. His conviction rate in criminal defense, meaning his acquittal and dismissal rate, was unusual. 63% of his cases resulted in acquittals or dismissals. In criminal defense, where prosecutors have significant resources and the burden of proof is on the defense, that was exceptional. That was revolutionary. He had saved dozens of people from wrongful convictions. He had exposed dozens of officers as dishonest or unconstitutional in their conduct. He had published articles in legal journals on Fourth Amendment protections and how they were being eroded by police practice. He had written a book titled The Color of Suspicion, Racial Profiling and Constitutional Law, which had become required reading in law schools across the country. The book had documented patterns of racial profiling in traffic stops. The book had provided legal strategies for challenging those stops. The book had cited hundreds of cases where officers had conducted illegal stops based on race. His name was known in legal circles as someone who was brilliant, meticulous, and absolutely committed to constitutional protections. He was respected by judges. He was feared by prosecutors. He was hated by police unions. He had spent his entire adult life fighting power, defending the powerless, and ensuring that constitutional rights were not theoretical concepts. They were lived, enforced realities. He had also been the lead attorney in a landmark civil rights case, Kingsley v. Harmon, which had resulted in a federal appellate decision that changed how courts evaluated traffic stops. The case had established that an officer must articulate specific, articulable facts that justify a stop. A hunch was not sufficient. A feeling was not sufficient. Suspicion based on appearance was not sufficient. The decision had affected thousands of cases nationwide. It had made it harder for officers to conduct stops based on racial profiling. It had set a legal standard that required actual evidence, not just bias. Jamal A. Kingsley also understood the specific vulnerability of being a black man in America. He understood that despite his education, despite his law degree, despite his professional accomplishments, despite his power in a courtroom, he was still subject to the same assumptions that affected every black person in this country. He understood that a police officer might see his suit and his education and his success and still see only a black man in an expensive car in a neighborhood where he supposedly did not belong. He had experienced traffic stops. He had been pulled over without probable cause. He had been questioned without legal justification. He had always remained calm, always been polite, always documented everything, always known that his profession, his education, and his power might not protect him when facing an officer who was determined to exercise authority without legal constraint.
License and registration, Officer Wellington said. His voice was clipped and authoritative. He was not asking. He was commanding.
now. Absolutely, officer, Jamal said. He was compliant. He was already reaching for his documents. But he was also asking questions. He was exercising his rights. First, what is the reason for the stop? What traffic violation did I commit? Your car feels suspicious, Officer Wellington said. The words came out before he had clearly thought them through, but he said them, and they were captured on the body cam. The words hung there. Feels was not probable cause. Feels was not reasonable suspicion. Feels was bias. Feels was assumption. Feels was exactly what the Kingsley v. Harmon decision had prohibited. The body cam captured the moment where a police officer had articulated no legal basis for the stop. Feels is not probable cause under the Fourth Amendment, Jamal said. His voice was still calm, but something had shifted. It had become legal, precise, educational, the voice of someone who had made these arguments 1,000 times. An officer must articulate specific, articulable facts that constitute reasonable suspicion. Your feeling about my vehicle is not sufficient under the law. Officer Wellington's face reddened, not from embarrassment, from anger, from frustration, from someone who had never been questioned about his authority being questioned about his authority. In 13 years of conducting 2,400 stops, how many drivers had questioned his authority? How many had asked for the legal basis? How many had understood the Constitution well enough to cite it? "You trying to be a smart guy?" Officer Wellington asked. His tone had shifted. It was no longer professional. It was personal. It was hostile. "No," Jamal said. "I'm trying to be a citizen with constitutional rights. I'm trying to understand the legal basis for this stop. I'm trying to comply with lawful orders while declining to comply with unlawful orders." Officer Wellington reached down and grabbed Jamal's door handle. The body cam captured the action, the moment where he took physical control of the vehicle. "Step out of the vehicle," Officer Wellington said. His hand was moving toward the door. His voice had risen. His body had tensed. "Now." "On what legal basis?" Jamal asked. He did not move. His hands remained on the steering wheel. His posture remained calm. An officer can only order a driver out of a vehicle if there is reasonable suspicion that the driver poses a threat to safety. What reasonable suspicion do you have that I pose a threat? Officer Wellington yanked the door open. The sound was sharp. The movement was aggressive. "Step out or I'll drag you out," Officer Wellington said. His voice was lower now, more dangerous. His hand was on his belt. He was escalating rapidly. He was losing control. He was letting his anger guide his actions rather than the law. "This entire interaction is being recorded on your body cam. You are violating my Fourth Amendment rights. You are assaulting me on camera. I am not resisting. I am not threatening you. I am simply asserting my constitutional rights." Officer Wellington paused. The body cam captured the hesitation, the moment where he understood that this was being recorded. But only for a moment. His anger overrode his hesitation. He pulled Jamal out of the vehicle anyway. Jamal exited without resisting. He stepped slowly. He kept his hands visible. He was not going to escalate. "I'm gonna call for backup," Officer Wellington said. He was reaching for his radio. His voice was official now. He was creating a record. He was documenting the incident from his perspective. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7, Officer Wellington said. His voice carried into the radio. The dispatcher would hear every word. "I've stopped a vehicle on Willow Bend Road. Driver is non-compliant, acting hostile, refusing to follow lawful orders, requesting backup for assistance." Jamal heard the lies being broadcast to the entire department. He heard himself being described as non-compliant when he was cooperating. He heard himself being described as hostile when his voice had remained calm throughout. He heard himself being described as refusing lawful orders when the orders themselves had been unlawful. But Jamal was not going to argue. Jamal was doing something else, something that Officer Wellington did not yet realize, something that would change everything.
Officer Harding walked back to his patrol vehicle. The body cam was still recording as he opened his door and sat in the driver's seat. He could be heard on the audio, speaking to dispatch. License and registration for Keisha Mitchell. Vehicle registered to the same. Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Running the information now. The bodycam then captured Officer Harding sitting in his vehicle, the documents in his hands. He was reading something on his computer screen. His face was visible in the rear-view mirror. He was frowning. Everything was legal. Every document was in order. The vehicle was registered. The insurance was current. The driver had no outstanding violations, no warrants, no criminal history. But Officer Harding was not satisfied. He exited his vehicle and returned to the driver's window. This time, his demeanor had changed. The casual, routine approach had been replaced with something else, something more accusatory. "Miss Mitchell," he said. He used her last name only. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." "Am I being cited for something?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "Step out of the vehicle, please," Officer Harding repeated. Dr. Mitchell opened the door carefully. She exited slowly. She did not argue. She did not resist. She simply complied. Officer Harding gestured for her to stand near the front of the vehicle. The bodycam captured the positioning. He was creating distance, creating authority, creating the appearance of potential threat. "How did you come into possession of this vehicle?" Officer Harding asked. "I purchased it 6 months ago. I have all the documentation." "That's what the registration says," Officer Harding said. "But registrations can be forged. Documents can be falsified." "My documents aren't forged," Dr. Mitchell said. Her voice remained calm. "They're from my bank. They're from the dealership. They're legitimate." "People steal cars," Officer Harding said. He was speaking as if she hadn't answered. "They register them under false names. They drive them for weeks before anyone notices." "I didn't steal this car," Dr. Mitchell said. "I own it." Officer Harding moved closer. The bodycam captured the invasion of space, the physical pressure, the attempt to intimidate through proximity. "You understand that grand theft auto is a felony. That's jail time. That's a criminal record. That's serious consequences." "I understand, and I also understand that I haven't committed any crime." Officer Harding was silent. The bodycam captured his face. His jaw was tight. He was not accustomed to being contradicted. He was not accustomed to someone refusing to admit to a crime they hadn't committed. "I'm going to need you to follow me to the station, where we can verify all of this information." "Am I being arrested?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "Not yet. You're being detained pending investigation."
Another patrol car turned the corner. Officer Wellington's supervisor, Sergeant David Matthews, pulled up. Sergeant Matthews was older, calmer, more experienced. He had been in law enforcement for 23 years. He understood liability. He understood exposure. He understood what happened when officers violated constitutional rights. Sergeant Matthews exited his vehicle with purpose. He approached Jamal directly. He saw the Bar Association card still in Jamal's hand. He saw the identification. "That's not—" Sergeant Matthews began to read the name. His face changed. His eyes widened. His stomach probably dropped. "Kingsley? As in the Kingsley versus Harmon case?" "Yes," Jamal said. "The same case that established that officers cannot conduct traffic stops based on racial suspicion. The same case that requires specific, articulable facts for reasonable suspicion. The same case that your officer appears to have violated completely on camera." Sergeant Matthews looked at Officer Wellington. The look was not angry. It was disappointed. It was the look of someone who understood that his officer had just made a catastrophic mistake, a mistake that would cost the city money, a mistake that would end a career, a mistake that would be studied in law schools. "Officer Wellington, step back," Sergeant Matthews said. His voice was calm, but carried absolute authority. "Attorney Kingsley, you are free to go.
I sincerely apologize for this interaction. There is no legal basis for this stop. You have not committed any traffic violation. You have violated no laws. You are completely free to proceed on your way." Officer Wellington did not argue. He did not resist. He simply stepped back. He had been overruled by his supervisor. The interaction was over, but the consequences were just beginning. Jamal closed his vehicle door. He rolled up his window. He waited as Sergeant Matthews moved away. He turned on his engine. He carefully checked his mirrors and moved back onto Willow Bend Road. As he drove away, Jamal looked in his rearview mirror. Officer Wellington was standing on the side of the road, watching him drive away. Officer Wellington's face was blank. He was understanding, in real time, what had just occurred. He had violated the rights of the man who had written the law that governed his own conduct. He had violated the Fourth Amendment on camera, in front of his own supervisor, on the body cam that was supposed to protect him. The live stream was still active. Rachel Martinez and the other attorneys were still watching. "We have everything," Rachel said through the phone speaker. "Every moment, every word, every violation. We're going to file suit first thing Monday morning. This is ironclad." Over the weekend, Jamal's law firm compiled a comprehensive analysis of what Officer Wellington had done. They reviewed the body cam footage frame by frame. They reviewed the dispatch logs word by word. They reviewed the dash cam footage from Officer Wellington's patrol vehicle. They reviewed the live stream recording. They reviewed everything, multiple times. What they found was a complete, undeniable pattern of constitutional violations, an illegal traffic stop with no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion articulated before the stop, no traffic violation observed before the stop, false statements to dispatch, unlawful detention, attempted unlawful search, assault and battery, racial profiling. Everything was documented. Everything was on multiple videos. Everything was indefensible. A legal expert was retained to provide analysis. The expert was a retired federal judge with 20 years of experience in constitutional law. The expert reviewed the Kingsley v. Harmon decision carefully. The expert reviewed the body cam footage frame by frame. The expert reviewed the dispatch logs. The expert concluded that Officer Wellington had violated the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and multiple state laws regarding traffic stops. The expert concluded that every element of an illegal stop was present. By Monday morning, Jamal's firm had drafted a comprehensive civil rights lawsuit. The lawsuit was detailed and specific. They named Officer Marcus Wellington individually. They named the Meadowbrook Police Department. They named the city of Meadowbrook. The lawsuit claimed false arrest and unlawful detention, civil rights violation under 12 U.S.C. Section 1983, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, violation of 14th Amendment, equal protection, assault and battery, abuse of authority, racial discrimination. The amount demanded in damages was $500,000. The firm filed the lawsuit in federal court on Monday, September 11th at 9:17 a.m. The police department received notice by noon. The city's legal team received notice by 1 p.m. Internal Affairs opened an investigation immediately. They did not conduct a leisurely, careful review. They understood the stakes. They conducted an urgent investigation. Officer Wellington was placed on administrative leave. His badge was surrendered. His access to the police station was revoked. His service weapon was secured. The investigation concluded within 1 week. The findings were clear and damning. Illegal stop, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, false statements to dispatch, unlawful detention, attempted unlawful search, assault and battery, all violations of constitutional law, all violations of department policy, all violations of basic legal procedure. Officer Wellington was terminated. His badge was revoked permanently. His certification was submitted to the State Police Decertification Board. He was added to the National Decertification Database, a registry that prevents officers who have been fired for misconduct from being hired by any other law enforcement agency. His career in law enforcement was over. At age 37, with 13 years of service, his employment had ended. His future had been irrevocably altered.
You don't live around here. What do you do in this neighborhood?
I just walked out of my house.
Yeah, I doubt that. You don't look like someone who owns property here.
Do you have a warrant or any legal reason to stop me?
I don't need one. Something about you isn't adding up.
You're detaining me on my own property because you decided I don't belong. Big mistake, officer.
For 20 years, Judge Sarah Jenkins had been the woman criminals feared, a federal judge who never bent, never wavered, and never let the guilty walk free. She'd put corrupt cops behind bars, shut down trafficking rings, and built a reputation as one of the most principled figures in the American justice system. But none of that mattered on the peaceful morning her home security camera recorded a patrol officer storming up her driveway, accusing her on her own property of breaking into a nice neighborhood. In front of her 2 children, he demanded she prove she belonged, grabbed her arm, and tried to arrest her without a warrant. What happened next would end his career, ignite a lawsuit, and force the city to pay dearly. How does a defender of justice respond when injustice comes for her? And what will this officer do once he realizes, too late, who she is? Keep watching to see the downfall unfold. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that like and subscribe button, because accountability only works when it's recorded. Judge Sarah Jenkins was born in 1975 in Chicago, Illinois. Her childhood had been defined by struggle and determination. Her mother, Dorothy Jenkins, had worked as a social worker in the South Side. Her father, Robert Jenkins, had been a high school teacher in a public school system perpetually underfunded and under-resourced. They had raised Sarah and her younger brother in a neighborhood where systemic inequality was not theoretical. It was visible on every block. It was lived every single day. She had watched the systems that were supposed to protect people fail those same people repeatedly. She had watched her mother work with families devastated by domestic violence, poverty, and neglect. She had watched her father teach children whose schools lacked basic resources. She had understood, even as a child, that the law was either a shield or a weapon. It depended on who wielded it. It depended on whether they wielded it fairly. She had decided early that she would become someone who wielded the law as a shield, as a protection, as a defense for people who had no other defense. She had graduated from the University of Illinois in 1997 with honors in criminal justice and political science. She had attended Northwestern Law School on a full scholarship after being accepted to Harvard and Yale as well. She had chosen Northwestern because she wanted to stay in Illinois. She wanted to work in the communities she knew. She had graduated in 2000, ranking in the top 7% of her class. She had chosen federal prosecution deliberately, not corporate law, not tax law, not the lucrative paths that many of her classmates had taken. Federal prosecution, where she could pursue violent criminals, traffickers, and those who exploited the vulnerable. Federal prosecution, where the most serious crimes were prosecuted, where victims could receive justice. For 19 years, she had worked as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Illinois. She had prosecuted human trafficking cases with meticulous attention to victim support and trauma-informed prosecution. She had prosecuted gang violence cases, gang-related murders, and organized crime cases. She had built a reputation as someone who was unrelenting in her pursuit of justice, meticulous in her preparation, and absolutely committed to securing convictions against the most dangerous criminals. Her conviction rate was 84% in cases that went to trial. That was exceptional for federal prosecution. In human trafficking cases, where the emotional trauma of victims made testimony difficult, it was revolutionary. She had secured convictions against 47 traffickers, removing them from the streets and preventing them from victimizing additional people. She had worked directly with survivors, counseling them through the trauma of testifying, supporting them emotionally through the legal process, and helping them understand their rights. She had been promoted to senior counsel in the criminal division at age 40.
She had supervised other prosecutors. She had trained new attorneys on the specific challenges of trafficking cases. She had written the federal office's trafficking manual, which is now used in offices across the country. She had testified before Congress on the subject of human trafficking and prosecution strategies.
Her name was known in law enforcement circles as someone who got results, someone who protected victims, someone who held predators accountable. When she was nominated to the federal bench at age 46, the nomination had come from President Joe Biden. She had been considered one of the most qualified judicial nominees in recent memory. She had been confirmed by the Senate with overwhelming support. She had taken the oath to uphold the Constitution. She understood that oath to mean that she would protect the vulnerable, that she would hold powerful people accountable, that she would enforce constitutional limits on authority, regardless of who wielded that authority. On the federal bench for 5 years, she had authored 41 published opinions. 19 of those opinions had reversed convictions or sentences on constitutional grounds. 8 had resulted in criminal charges being filed against law enforcement officers for misconduct. Her courtroom was known throughout the federal system as a place where victims were respected and where those who victimized were held accountable. She had sentenced 12 officers to federal prison for civil rights violations. Judge Sarah Jenkins was also a mother. She had 2 children, Marcus, age 9, and Zoe, age 7. She had adopted both children through the foster care system. Marcus had been abandoned at birth in an Illinois hospital. He had spent his first 3 years in temporary care before Judge Jenkins adopted him. Zoe had been removed from a home where she experienced severe neglect and physical abuse. She had been in foster care for 2 years before Judge Jenkins adopted her. Judge Jenkins had given both children stability, structure, love, a safe place to grow. She had taken them to counseling when they needed it. She had made sure they understood that they were wanted, that they were loved, that they belonged in a safe home where they would never be abandoned again. Being a mother and a federal judge was extraordinarily difficult. The hours were long, often 14-hour days. The emotional weight was heavy, making decisions that affected people's lives and freedom. But she had made it work. She had built a life that honored both her commitment to justice and her commitment to her children. She had hired a nanny. She had arranged her schedule to maximize time with Marcus and Zoe. She had made sure that despite her professional demands, her children knew they were her priority. She lived in a suburban neighborhood northwest of Chicago. The homes in the neighborhood were modest to middle class. Her home was a 4-bedroom colonial with blue shutters, a white fence, a driveway, and a small backyard where the children played. She had purchased it 6 years earlier after her judicial appointment. She had paid a mortgage. She had planted a garden. She had created a place where her children could grow up safely, where they would have memories of childhood, where they would feel secure. On the morning of the incident, Judge Jenkins had woken at 6:30 a.m. She had gone through her morning routine with the precision that characterized everything she did. She had prepared breakfast. She had made waffles because Zoe loved waffles, particularly when Judge Jenkins made them from scratch. She had squeezed fresh orange juice. She had made sure Marcus had his lunch packed for school, with the sandwich he preferred and the fruit he would actually eat. She had checked that both children had their backpacks, their homework, their required school documents. She had moved through her morning routine with calm efficiency. Nothing unusual, nothing extraordinary, just a mother preparing to take her children to school before heading to her workplace. This was a routine she had done hundreds of times. The rhythm was familiar. The schedule was tight but manageable. At 7:06 a.m., according to her home security camera, Judge Jenkins had told Marcus and Zoe to get their backpacks and meet her at the car. She needed to drop them at school by 7:45 a.m. The school was 15 minutes away. She needed to be at the courthouse by 8:30 a.m. for her first case. The schedule was tight but manageable. She had done this routine hundreds of times. She had walked them to the driveway. The morning was cool. The sun was just breaking through the clouds. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that came at that early hour before most people had fully engaged with their days. A quiet that suggested safety, a quiet that felt peaceful. Marcus and Zoe had walked beside her. Marcus was carrying his backpack and his lunchbox. Zoe was carrying her pink backpack. They were talking about their day. Marcus was worried about a math test. Zoe was excited about a school project. They were children living a normal morning with their mother. Judge Jenkins had been locking her front door when she heard the patrol car turn onto her street. The sound was unremarkable. Patrol cars drove down residential streets constantly. She thought nothing of it.
Officer Daniel Kovach was in his mid-30s, muscular, with a reputation in the department for aggressive stops and questionable decision-making. He had been on the force for 12 years. He had conducted approximately 2,000 traffic stops and pedestrian encounters. He had been the subject of 9 internal affairs complaints. All of them had been closed without discipline. The complaints were consistent in their pattern: aggressive approach, rapid escalation, accusations without evidence, racial profiling. But internal affairs had not pursued any of them. The cases had been closed. Officer Kovach had been cleared. He had continued working. At 7:08 a.m., according to the timestamp on his Bodycam, Officer Kovach had received a call from dispatch, a report of a possible breaking and entering in the neighborhood. The caller had stated that they saw a black woman acting suspicious near a house. No one had reported actually seeing a break-in. No alarm had been triggered. The report was vague, based on appearance and perception, not on any actual criminal activity. Officer Kovach had been instructed to investigate. He had been given an address. He had decided to drive to the neighborhood. He had activated his Bodycam as a matter of routine. At 7:08 a.m., according to the timestamp on his Bodycam, Officer Kovach had turned onto Judge Jenkins Street. He had seen a woman, Judge Sarah Jenkins, standing in her driveway with 2 children. The woman was locking her front door. The children were holding backpacks. Everything about the scene suggested exactly what it was: a mother preparing to take her children to school. But Officer Kovach had made an instant calculation: a black woman, a nice neighborhood, a house that suggested wealth or at least middle-class stability. The calculation was not based on facts. It was based on assumption. The assumption that a black woman should not own or live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. Officer Kovach had slowed his patrol vehicle. He had continued toward the house. He had not approached cautiously. He had approached with purpose, with certainty, with the conviction that he had identified someone who did not belong. He had pulled into the driveway. He exited his vehicle sharply. The Bodycam activated as he exited. The image showed the driveway from his perspective. The security camera would later show the same scene from a stationary angle. "Excuse me," Officer Kovach said. His voice was not friendly. It was accusatory. "What are you doing here?" Judge Jenkins turned. Her posture was open. Her hands were visible. She was not defensive. She was simply a woman who had been interrupted while preparing to leave her own home. "I'm taking my children to school," Judge Jenkins said. Her voice was calm, professional, the voice of someone used to speaking in controlled, measured tones. "We live here." "This is your house?" Officer Kovach asked. The question was phrased to suggest disbelief. The question was designed to communicate that he did not accept her explanation. "Yes," Judge Jenkins said. "This is my home. My children live here. We are preparing to go to school." Officer Kovach stepped closer. The Bodycam recorded the invasion of space, the physical pressure being applied through proximity. "I received a report of someone breaking into a nice neighborhood. Someone matching your description was seen acting suspiciously. I was locking my front door. I was not breaking into anything. I was leaving my own home with my children." Officer Kovach did not lower his voice. He did not step back. He stepped closer.
You're breaking into a nice neighborhood. That doesn't belong here."
The words hung there. The body cam captured them. The security camera captured them. The moment where bias became explicit. The moment where assumption became accusation. The moment where a police officer stated clearly that a black woman should not be in a nice neighborhood. Marcus and Zoe had begun to look nervous. They sensed something wrong. They sensed that their mother was being treated as if she had done something wrong. They sensed threat. "Officer, I live here," Judge Jenkins said. Her voice remained calm, but something had shifted. It had become firmer. It had become the voice of someone who understood the law and understood that what was happening was illegal. "This is my home. I have every right to be here. My children live here. We have every right to be on our own property." "Do you have identification?" Officer Kovacs asked. "Not on me," Judge Jenkins said. "I was about to take my children to school. I would not normally carry my identification to walk to my car in my own driveway." "Step away from the vehicle," Officer Kovacs said. His hand had moved to his belt. "I need to verify your story." "My story?" Judge Jenkins said. "I am standing in my own driveway. This is not a story. This is where I live." "Step away from the vehicle," Officer Kovacs repeated. Judge Jenkins did not move. She remained standing where she was. She was not being argumentative. She was simply refusing to comply with an order that had no legal basis. Officer Kovacs moved toward her. His hand went to her arm. He grabbed her wrist, not gently, not with the care that would be shown to someone complying, with the force of someone asserting physical dominance. Marcus and Zoe began to cry. They could see that their mother was being handled roughly. They could see that something was very wrong. "Don't touch me," Judge Jenkins said. Her voice had changed. It was no longer calm. It carried the weight of a person who understood what was happening. "You are violating my Fourth Amendment rights. You are assaulting me in front of my children. This is all being recorded. You need to release me immediately." Officer Kovacs did not release her. He pulled her wrist toward him. He turned her around. He pulled her hand behind her back. "You're under arrest for trespassing," Officer Kovacs said. "I am not trespassing on my own property," Judge Jenkins said. Her voice was still controlled despite the situation. "You have no warrant. You have no probable cause. You are conducting an unlawful arrest." Officer Kovacs applied handcuffs. The metal closed around her wrists with two distinct clicks. The body cam recorded the moment. The security camera recorded the moment. Marcus and Zoe were crying now. They were calling out to their mother. They were asking what was happening. They were confused and afraid. "Mommy!" Zoe cried out. She was 7 years old. She did not understand what was happening. She only understood that her mother was being taken away. "It's okay, baby," Judge Jenkins said. She was still calm. She was still trying to protect her children, even as she was being arrested. "It's okay. This is a mistake. Stay with your nanny. I will explain everything." The nanny, who had been inside the house preparing to leave with the children, had come to the door. Her name was Patricia. She had worked for Judge Jenkins for 3 years. She understood immediately that something terrible was happening. Officer Kovacs was walking Judge Jenkins toward his patrol car. She was in handcuffs. She was being treated as a criminal. She was being arrested on her own property, in front of her children, without a warrant, without probable cause. Marcus and Zoe were running after their mother. Patricia was trying to hold them back. They were screaming. A neighbor, Margaret Chen, had come out of her house. She had heard the commotion. She had seen Judge Jenkins being handcuffed. She had seen the children crying. She immediately recognized what was happening. "That's Judge Jenkins," Margaret Chen said. Her voice was loud enough for others to hear. "That's our judge. Stop! You're making a mistake." Officer Kovacs did not stop. He continued walking Judge Jenkins toward his patrol car. He was not listening. He was not caring about the reality of the situation. He was executing what he had decided to do. Other neighbors were emerging from their homes. They were seeing the spectacle. They were confused. They were alarmed. Several of them recognized Judge Jenkins. Several of them had seen her on local news. Several of them knew that she was a federal judge. Officer Kovac opened the rear door of his patrol car. He placed his hand on Judge Jenkins' head, a gesture typically used with suspects, not with law-abiding citizens. He guided her into the back seat. The body cam captured every moment. Judge Jenkins was placed in the back of a police car at 17:19 a.m., according to the body cam timestamp. She had been arrested at 7:12 a.m. The arrest had taken 7 minutes. 7 minutes from her locking her front door to being placed in the back of a patrol vehicle. Officer Kovac was driving when his radio crackled. Dispatch was providing him updated information that changed everything. The dispatch voice was tight. Unit 12, be advised, your detainee is identified as Federal Judge Sarah Jenkins, Northern District. Verify immediately. Officer Kovac's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The body cam captured his face in the rearview mirror. The moment of realization, the moment where he understood what he had done. He did not immediately release her. He continued driving. He was calculating. He was understanding in real time that he had made a catastrophic error, an irreversible error, an error that was being recorded. At 7:34 a.m., according to the body cam timestamp, a black SUV with federal agents pulled alongside Officer Kovac's vehicle on the highway. 2 agents exited. They moved to the patrol car with authority. One agent opened the rear door where Judge Jenkins was seated, still in handcuffs. "Uncuff her," the agent said. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "Immediately." Officer Kovac hesitated. "Now," the agent repeated. Officer Kovac exited his vehicle. He walked to the back. He removed the handcuffs. Judge Jenkins' wrists were examined immediately. There were marks, red marks where the metal had pressed into her skin, bruises forming where the cuffs had been applied with force. "Your Honor," the agent said, his voice changing to deep respect, "I sincerely apologize for this situation." Judge Jenkins did not speak for a moment. She was gathering herself. She was breathing deeply. She was understanding what had just occurred. She had been arrested without probable cause. She had been arrested on her own property. She had been arrested in front of her children, and it had all been recorded. "I want his badge number," Judge Jenkins said. "I want his name. I want everything documented, and I will be filing a federal civil rights complaint." By the time Judge Jenkins had returned home to her children, the story was already beginning to spread. Patricia had called her attorney. Margaret Chen had called a news station. The security camera footage was already being copied and shared. By noon, the body cam footage had leaked to local news. By 2 p.m., it had been shared on social media. By 4 p.m., millions of people had seen a federal judge being arrested on her own property without a warrant. The reaction was immediate and intense. The police department's phone lines were flooded with calls. The mayor's office was receiving messages. The city council was being contacted. National news outlets were picking up the story. Internal Affairs opened an investigation immediately. They did not conduct a leisurely, careful review. They conducted an urgent investigation. They knew the optics were catastrophic. They knew the legal exposure was enormous. Officer Kovac was placed on administrative leave, not suspension with pay, administrative leave pending investigation. His badge was surrendered. His access to the police station was revoked. The investigation concluded within 72 hours. The findings were clear and damning. Unlawful stop, unlawful detention, unlawful arrest, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, racial profiling,
assault, all violations of constitutional law, all violations of department policy. An legal expert appeared on television to break down what had occurred. She explained the Fourth Amendment requirement for probable cause. She explained that an officer cannot arrest someone simply because they believe the person looks suspicious. She explained that Officer Kovach had violated the most fundamental protections of the Constitution. Judge Jenkins filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. She named Officer Kovach individually. She named the police department. She named the municipality. She named the city. The lawsuit claimed false arrest, civil rights violation under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, violation of 14th Amendment rights, emotional distress to minors, assault, battery, abuse of authority, racial discrimination. The amount demanded in damages was substantial, but more than monetary compensation, Judge Jenkins was demanding accountability. She was demanding that the system acknowledge what had happened and ensure it would not happen again. Officer Kovach's defense was weak. He claimed he had received a report of suspicious activity, but the report had not matched Judge Jenkins at all. The report had been vague. The report had been based entirely on appearance. The Bodycam footage showed clearly that Judge Jenkins had done nothing suspicious. She had been locking her door and preparing to leave her home with her children. Witnesses testified. The nanny testified about the children's trauma. Neighbors testified about what they had witnessed. A law enforcement expert testified about racial profiling patterns in police stops. A constitutional law professor testified about Fourth Amendment violations. The jury watched the Bodycam footage repeatedly. They saw Officer Kovach approach with hostility. They saw him refuse to accept simple explanations. They saw him escalate without cause. They saw him grab Judge Jenkins and place her in handcuffs. They saw him refuse to stop even when the truth became apparent. Several jury members were visibly shaken by what they saw. Officer Kovach testified. He claimed he had been responding to a report. He claimed he had had reasonable suspicion. He claimed that Judge Jenkins had been evasive and non-compliant. But the Bodycam footage contradicted every statement he made. The footage showed him escalating without cause. The footage showed Judge Jenkins remaining calm despite his hostility. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. They reviewed the footage multiple times. They reviewed the law. They asked questions of the judge about the standard for reasonable suspicion. They asked questions about the standard for probable cause. They were taking their responsibility seriously. On day 2 of deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict. Officer Daniel Kovach had violated Judge Sarah Jenkins' constitutional rights. He was liable for civil rights violations. He was liable for false arrest. He was liable for assault.